It's the story of stories. It's a story about stories. If you can understand this story, you can understand all stories because it's the story of stories. This, you see the seed itself? It's the story. It's the story of us. It is the logos, the word, the calling, the divine blueprint. It's inside all of us, but something happens along the way. You see, when we're children, we are closer to God. We don't have all these things that make us forget. The way I see it, a farmer comes along and plants this remembering. It begins to germinate something, begins to spark the calling. And four things can happen. The first thing, the earthly part of us, some people call it the ego, begins to question with its security mechanisms. It's only trying to protect the body, the earthly part of us. But what can happen is it can be disconnected from the cosmic part of us. It can say, that's stupid, that'll never work. You should just stick to the well-beaten path that other people have done, and you know it'll work. But the problem is that's a beaten path for other people. It's a trodden path that might work for someone else, but it doesn't nurture your calling. And so the ego, like a bird, comes along and snatches it up, and that's the end. The second thing that can happen is it can go into rocky soil where it doesn't get enough water, where it doesn't get nurtured, it doesn't get cared for, loved. And then all of a sudden, life happens. The shit hits the fan. The sun comes out and burns, it scorches it, roasts it. And this is like adversities, trials, challenges, tests, even animosity, because you got the calling and it doesn't look like my calling. Or they got the calling and it doesn't look like that person's calling. It doesn't get the individual care. And so it begins to wither up. Abort mission. The third thing that can happen is that it gets some decent soil, begins to grow, it begins to sprout. But the problem is there's too many thorns around. There's not enough airflow. It gets choked out by the stresses and worries of life. What if this happens? What if that happens? It begins to believe that if only I attain this certain level of success, of achievement, of attainment, of acquisition, of wealth, affluence, of ability, then I'll be happy. Then I'll be fulfilled. But all these things are choking out the plant. They're sucking up the nutrients and keeping it from the sun, where it gives it energy to take action. Abort mission. All the energy went into these worries and trying to attain something else. The fourth thing that can happen is it can get into some decent soil, away from the thorns, where it gets water, it gets to grow, it gets nutrients, it gets the sun, it gets to breathe, it gets a plan of action, it gets a strategy, and it puts that plan into action, into energy. It gets an energetic force behind it. It's not putting its energy into other things. It focuses on this divine blueprint. And all of a sudden, it begins to blossom and flower. And there's so many blossoms and so many flowers that there's 100 times more fruit than when it started with. There's 60 times more fruit, 30 times more fruit, until all of a sudden, the farmer has all these excess of seeds that it can spread out into other fields, into the next season. It begins to spark other growth for everyone, for the whole world. And all of a sudden, there's blossoming trees everywhere. There's the fragrance of flowers. There's the abundance of fruit. There's a beautiful world, all because of one seed that was allowed to grow, that was taken care of, nurtured, that was loved.